Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Janine Cintrone, editor and director of content for Staten Island Parent. Today, we're going to be talking with Lenore Skenazy of Let Grow, an organization that supports parents in encouraging children's independence. So before I introduce Lenore, I just want to talk about why we're holding this event here on this beautiful sunny day. So many of you probably noticed the last year has been a little bit of a struggle, but it's offered a lot of opportunities for growth. So we've heard from so many parents that their kids now are doing things like cleaning up after themselves, they're making their own breakfast, they're setting their own alarm for their online classes. And so much of it is necessary because parents are working from home and kids are doing these online learning classes they've never had to do before. So it's just been such a terrific opportunity for kids to really just gain that independence. And you might even have noticed that when your kids had to step up to these challenges, they did so effortlessly. They actually were ready for it. They wanted to do them. My son, who's in the 7th grade, he just returned last week to in-person learning last Thursday, after he's been doing online learning since for however many months now. And he set his own alarm. He got up himself. He made his own breakfast, made his own lunch. He walked to school. He texted me to let me know he was on, I'm sorry, he talked to the bus. He walked to the bus stop. He texted me to let me know he was on the bus. We were just so proud of him and he was so proud of himself. And I got extra sleep and it was just lovely. So anyway, today we're going to take a look at how we foster these great behaviors. And in doing so, we are going to make our lives better for ourselves and for our kids. So thank you so much for joining us, Lenore. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about how Let Grow came to be?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I've spent a lot of time on Staten Island, not this past year when I haven't even gotten on the ferry, but the year before that, because your borough president, James Oddo, who I think is a spectacular person and a real thinker about his, about the people on his, in his borough and about the kids. And he had read the book, The Coddling of the American Mind, which is interested in how come kids seem to be fragile today, especially by the time they get to college. There are a lot of kids who are having a hard time, and this is pre-COVID, dealing with the everyday problems of, there's a mouse in the dorm, you break up with a girlfriend, you're getting a B-, God forbid.
A little bit about yourself. Sorry.
Oh,
sorry, a little that. Go on.
No, I was trying to do it too, trying to figure out how to share with all my pages. I could only figure out how to share with one. Tech, what can I say? We need those kids around us if we're going to figure out anything. For God's sake, bring that 7th grader back.
He's upstairs if we need him. Don't worry.
Oh, great. You got tech support upstairs. That's good. Anyway, so James Oddo, your borough president, was saying, was concerned about the same thing as me, which is, we've been treating kids as so fragile in the last generation or two, saying, let me do this for you, let me drive you there, let me help you. And we've been told to do this by so many of the different, media, the parenting magazines, not Staten Island Parent, but I mean Parent Magazine, the Bible that's always telling you to worry about something new, and neighbors and laws. And it just became this tsunami of watch outs. To the point where we constricted our kids' lives to basically, a nice booster seat in the back of the SUV. And that meant that we were spending all our time, chauffeuring our kids and watching over them and helping them and, doing their homework with them and timing the reading log and you name it. And that kids were having very little independence, autonomy, even falling off their bike and having to get home by themselves because they were never on their bikes and they were never by themselves. And so, when James read that book, which talks about the author of the book came to me and said, let's start an organization together that fights this culture of overprotection, the culture of fear. And so that's how Let Grow began. But the reason the author of the book came to me to begin with is that a zillion years ago, I let my 9-year-old ride the subway by himself in Manhattan. And from Bloomingdale's down to the 30s and then across town on a bus. And I had written a column about it in the newspaper. And 2 days after Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone appeared in the paper, I was on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR. Fox News and NPR, everybody was upset with me. Why did you do it? What if you never came home? Just a whole lot of hating. Even before we had Twitter, there was hate. How do you like that? And I got the nickname from from the press, America's Worst Mom. If you Google, I know. I think I'd outgrow that at this point. In any event, so the weekend after this weird firestorm, I started a blog called Free Range Kids. And I wanted to explain my side of this decision, which was, first of all, it was me and my husband, who you never hear of as America's Worst Dad because nobody cares. And I'll bet there's a lot of moms watching this podcast right now, or whatever this is, this seminar. And I wanted to explain that I love safety. I'm a scared mom to begin with. I wish my kids didn't drive. They're driving age now. It drives me nuts. But I love helmets and car seats and seat belts and mouth guards. I just don't think the kids need a security guard every time they leave the house. And then I wrote a book called Free Range Kids. And then it sort of became a movement of parents who are sick of being told that everything is too much for their kids to handle, that everything is so dangerous that they can't do anything we did, even when we were kids. It's an insult to the kids, and it's a drag for the parents because it's really unnecessary. And in fact, the fact that these kids are getting to college and feeling so fragile, I don't think it's doing anyone any favors to treat this generation as if they can't handle anything that all generations previously could handle.
I love this. I cannot agree more. I really can't. So I just want to talk a little bit about the past year, just because I feel like for us parents with kids in school, it's felt like such a year of academic loss and regression. My son has had just his grades have gone down as a result of it. It's just, how do you characterize this year, and how do we focus on the positives?
Well, first of all, the good thing, which is weird, is that everybody is having this same year. Everybody is having a hell of a year with all expectations out the window. With school is very strange, from the teachers to the students to the aides. Nothing is normal. It's strange that we used to think that things could be normal all the time. And I think that when we take a step back, almost a historic step back, we'll recognize that, like, throughout history, there were always ups and downs, grave, serious ups and downs, not just pandemics, wars, famines, upheavals, people crossing oceans to get away from, wars and Cossacks and starvation. And it's recently that we've been enjoying this sort of smooth ride, but humanity was sort of created. I'm not going to talk about how humanity was created, but people were created. We've evolved to be able to roll with a lot more punches than we've had to roll with in the past couple of generations. And I was talking with, I think it might have been you. I was talking with some people yesterday about, we think about the greatest generation, the people who went through the famine of the Depression, and who went through, immediately out of the Depression and the breadlines and the Dust Bowl, were thrown into World War II, and their loved ones are going overseas, and there's this war going on, and all the women are riveting, and all the food is being rationed. And we call that the greatest generation. And I don't think that they were born any different than any other generation, but they were forged in tough times. And I wonder if, this is further down the line, but all these kids who have had to go through more than even, my kids who are a little older had to go through, kids who were thrown out of third grade, thrown out of, missing their prom, missing, going through their, transitioning to middle school. They had this big upset. And I wonder if they're going to be a little stronger because life wasn't perfect. I mean, if we were talking about the fragile generation where we've been doing everything for them so that life is one big smoothie, that we intervene if they get a bad grade, and we make sure that the kids are separated if they're arguing, and we make sure they share their toys all the time, and everybody gets invited to the birthday party. And then along comes a pandemic. Maybe, the upside might be a certain resilience and steeliness that's being forged now. So it doesn't mean that they're, going through the greatest moments of their lives now, but it could be that, they end up better rounded, I would say. And in terms of what I'm hearing two very different and yet often melded together things. One is that this is an impossible year. It's terrible for the kids. They're missing their friends so much. The academics is just a mess. but tell this story about your son. You just were talking about it. So this morning, why do you think he suddenly manned up? I mean, that's what it sounds like. He got himself out of bed, breakfast, teeth brush, backpack, out the door, and responsible enough to text you so that you don't go wake up at 10 and think, oh my God, is he still in bed? And open the door and where is he? What do you think caused that?
I mean, I feel like a lot of it was I did sit him down the night before and I told him when I was your age, when I was 12 or when I was 11, my parents, they both had full-time jobs. They were doing their own thing, they would get up and get themselves ready. They didn't have time to worry about, I'm the youngest of 3 kids too. So by the time they got down to me, they were like,
who cares?
We don't have time for this. So, he's my first, so it's a little different. But yeah, I mean, I told him, I was like, when I got up, I set my own alarm. I had that obnoxious alarm that goes, that annoying alarm. Right. I had. Everybody hated it in my whole house, and I pressed snooze 1,000 times. But the point was, I did it myself. I got myself ready. I had my own breakfast. I made my own lunch. I did everything myself. And this is what I explained to him. And I wasn't trying to make him feel bad. I didn't want him to feel like, oh, why was mom able to do that? And I'm not. I think it was more of an inspiration for him. He realized, well, if you could do it, why can't I do it? And so and I can't tell you how many times I said to myself in the past, I did this. Why can't he do this? And then it dawned on me. I had that aha moment. I'm like, why don't I just tell him, like, yeah, I did this. You can do it too. You're 12. The bus stop is around the corner. Like, you can walk there. This is not a big, humongous deal, and we're lucky today as parents that our kids are able, I mean, the phones
that they're going to school. Yeah.
Right. The phones have a lot of downsides and upsides, but I have to say the fact that I can track his location and that he can text me to tell me I'm on the bus, mom. It was huge. It was really, for me, it was a huge moment. And for his dad and myself, we were all just like so proud of him. I really was proud of him.
I don't even know him, and I'm proud of him. And I'm proud, and I'm proud of you for recognizing at some point, finally, like, wait a minute, I don't have to keep my competence at his age a secret from him. It's not going to devastate him to hear that I could do this and you can't. It's going to make him think you could do this. So could I. So what we believe, so Let Grow is based on the premise that our kids are smarter and safer than our culture gives them credit for. And I'd just like to tell you where our fears came from that stopped us from expecting them to wake up and get themselves to the bus stop and, maybe even handle a jerk on the bus and then get to school and be okay and play after school. How come all that disappeared? And what you're talking about is one generation. I mean, you were doing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, people think I'm anti-helicopter parent, and I resent that because, first of all, I'm part helicopter on my mom's side. And secondly, I don't think if you have an entire country all acting the same, all expecting to drive the kids to the bus stop, to drag the kids out of bed, it's not like each individual person became this crazy helicopter parent because there's such a neurotic nut job. It's a culture that has been teaching us this is how to parent. And there's a magazine called Parents, not Staten Island Parents, that, let me reiterate that.
Thank you for specifying.
That's right. If you're on Staten Island, you want Staten Island Parents. And maybe if you're in the rest of the country, you want Staten Island Parents, because Parents Magazine itself, it seems to be, it's just such a strange cultural artifact. People will be reading it in 100 years and saying, can you believe this is what they told parents to do? And there's one story that I just thought was the most Parents Magazine of the Parents Magazine articles. And it was how to have the perfect play date. It was the play date playbook. And the article was like a lot of questions about play date etiquette. And one of the questions was, if your kid is old enough to stay home alone, like yours would be, for a short amount of time, and often does, but now she has a play date over, can you still run to the dry cleaner? And Parents Magazine said, are you kidding? Absolutely not. And the reasons were twofold. One is they found somebody in New Jersey. It's always someone in New Jersey. It's where all the freelance writers are, and all the jokes, who had, her daughter had a play date over, and the mom was actually home. So this wasn't even a perfect anecdote. The mom was in the backyard, though. Apparently you should always be right next to your kid, like with manacles. But anyways, the mom was so far away that the kid was in the kitchen with her play date. They microwaved some macaroni. They pulled it out. It spilled on them, and there were burns. I'm sure it was unpleasant.
Mhm.
Doesn't sound like World War III. So first of all, your child could get physically hurt. But then they said, and what if there's a spat? You want to be able to, the word wasn't intervened. It's like you want to be able to help out before anyone's feelings get too hurt. And to me, that is why we have the fragile generation. If you've told parents that, first of all, your child is so traumatized and so by a spat and so incapable of solving it herself, and it is such a big deal that you better be listening, in like with one of those tin cans while they're playing Barbies in the next room, or maybe you've got your Alexa listening for you or your baby monitor, and to rush in the minute, like, right, no, she wants to be Ken, and then nobody wants to be Ken. She wants to be Barbie, and then you'll be Barbie. The level of involvement that they're expecting parents to have, first of all, you can't even have that if you have more than one kid because you're listening to the two cans. And the level of sensitivity, hypersensitivity that you're assuming that the child has, that they are so overblown by an argument with a friend, means that they never even learn how to deal with an argument with a friend because you're there intervening. And it's sort of like the COVID year writ small. You want them to have to deal with some unpleasantness, some difficulty, some little bumps in the road. There's even an expression that you can't prepare the road for your child, so you prepare your child for the road. Well, Parents Magazine has been saying, get out there with a steamroller 2 inches in front of your kid and flatten it out and pour the asphalt on, and then let it cool because you don't want the asphalt sticking to their feet. And then they can gingerly step with you, directing traffic all the way. And so when we parents are raising our kids being told that this is the only good way to parent, it's exhausting for us. And I think it leads to kids thinking, I don't have to get out of bed. That's my mom's job. I don't have to prepare my breakfast. My mom's supposed to do it. And I heard a story that was sort of extremely similar to yours. When right after the COVID struck, we at Let Grow, we did a survey of 1,600 kids and 1,600 parents about how the kids were coping. And I can talk about the survey in a second, but I'll tell you my favorite story, which was that one of the moms we ended up interviewing said that her 7-year-old first grader was also impossible to get out of bed in the morning. And she'd go and wake her and then start getting everything else ready for school. And then she'd come back and the kid was still in bed. And it's like, you're kidding. I can't believe you're still there. Get out of bed. And it's like, here's your clothes. And then while the kid is putting on the clothes, the mom is running downstairs and pouring the cereal and putting in the milk and getting the backpack ready and turning on the car, because everything depends on getting out the door at 7:13 so that you're not at the back of the drop-off line, God forbid. And then everything else is, a cascade of dominoes of a disaster of a day. And so the kid is basically like yours, is sort of I'm doing what I must, but the bare minimum, I'm breathing, and I'm putting the spoon to my mouth. That's about it.
Are you outside my house with a camera? How do you know this?
I am inside your house with a camera, ironically, right now. So I think it's a lot of people's houses. And what I'm hoping is that a lot of people's houses were like you and also like this woman, which is that after COVID struck, one of the things that changed was you no longer had to get out of bed that early to get at the back of the line because there was no line, because there was no school, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so the mom started sleeping in and the daughter started waking up. And the daughter woke up before her mom and somehow managed to get herself out of bed, dressed, into the kitchen, pours the cereal, pours the milk, eats it. And then the mom said this didn't happen every time, but some of the times then the girl would get out a banana and a little thing of yogurt and 2 slices of bread and put them in the toaster, and up they popped. And then she would butter the bread, and then the breakfast would be ready for her mother. So it was, Freaky Friday in their house. And I think a couple of things explain why. One of them is the time pressure. The other thing is, with parents working, you're a working mom and a couple of kids and the homework due and the reading log, and you got to get dinner on the table, and there's soccer 3 afternoons a week. When all of that was happening, you didn't have any wiggle room. If the girl, if your kid spilled the milk, and you had to spend 5 minutes cleaning it up, or they had to spend half an hour cleaning it up because they're slower, you couldn't deal with that. So we took over so many of the normal things that kids could do at that age but they didn't because we needed them out the door at a particular time. So the time pressure was off. And then everything was so free floating, and the parents were desperate and trying to keep their jobs or work or look for a job. And the kids had this sort of more free time. And it used to be the other way around. That's why when we did our survey, the Let Grow survey of these 1,600 kids and parents, so many of the parents, and not all of them, so don't feel bad if it's not you, but like 70-something% of the parents said the kids were helping out around the house more now than they had before. In part because the parents were desperate, like you, and in part because it was so boring, you might as well do something. I guess I'll vacuum. And in part because they were home so much, and in part because it's a virtuous cycle. Once you do start setting the table, then you feel like you're not a baby, and your parents see you as a little bit more of a grown-up kid too, and they depend on you. And that's a great feeling. I'm sure your son on that bus today texting you, Mom, I'm out the door. I'm actually on the bus already. What do you think he was feeling?
He was proud, and I think he was looking for that praise from me too. I think he was excited to tell me, and he was excited for me to let his dad know. And they want to know that they did a good job.
Yeah, I think it's a good job, and I think it's also they want to show you who they are.
Yeah,
this is who I am. I'm not a baby. I'm competent. I helped you out. See me as more of a young man than a baby.
Right.
So it's praise, but I think it's recognition. See me for who I am. I mean, I did this television show called World's Worst Mom, which is me, not the mom visited. Yeah. Anyways, it was buried for years, and now suddenly it resurfaced on YouTube. So I'm excited about it again. And it was fun. It was fun. It was daunting, I have to say. Now it looks fun because it's years later. But the producers found me 13 extraordinarily anxious and protective parents, like a mom who fed her 10-year-old in his mouth, like,
oh my goodness,
like that. A mom who let her 8-year-old have a skateboard, but he could only stand on it on the grass. Like the wheels were not allowed to move. Like, this is sort of fun, not that fun.
not fun. Yeah.
Mom who took her 13-year-old son into the ladies' room with her, because if he went into the men's room, who knows what would happen. And why am I telling you this story? Oh, I know. It's because, and a mom, it sounds like I only dealt with moms of sons, but I have sons, and maybe that's why these resonated with me. Yeah. There was one who had a 16-year-old, and next year he'd be a senior in high school. So they wanted him to, the production team said, we want you to go look at a college campus. And his mom packed his backpack for him and gave him an Elmo juice box. First of all, there's like barely any juice in there. And when you're 16 years old at about 6'4", that's not going to get you very far. And then we ended up meeting the son at the campus after he'd gotten himself there on a bus. And he didn't see us there at first, and we saw him. And the mom saw him, and he is this tall kid walking among these other college students. And she was so elated. She picked me up and twirled me. I thought, like, is she going to throw me? Because she didn't like me at first. But she picked me up and twirled me around, like my feet off the ground, like a cartoon character, because she was bursting with pride seeing her son, who she had just given an Elmo juice box to, as a blossoming young man. And the thing that I think is tragic about this parents culture, remember, jump in the minute your kid has a problem, and don't let them use the microwave even at 9 or 10, because God knows what could happen, is that we're depriving parents of the moment you had today.
Yeah.
That pride. I mean, like, you have kids so that eventually, when you're not here anymore, when you're not here literally, well, actually, literally, let's just go right there. Let's just go straight to mortality. When you're not here, for whatever reason, they will be able to continue on. And if you're always doing everything, if you think they can't even get themselves out of bed in the morning, then you never have that reassurance, which is translated into joy of seeing your kid become competent.
Yeah. One of the struggles that I have with my son is and again, I know we keep talking about boys. I do have a daughter too.
Who
But
cares?
she doesn't, yeah,
Really?
she's the younger one. She doesn't have the anxiety that my son has anxiety. And so the past year has been harder for him, especially being new to junior high school as of last year. So how do you help quell your kids' anxiety if they want to be independent, but they're not necessarily, it just doesn't come as naturally because they're just so used to mom holding their hands, you know?
Well, isn't that interesting? You've just said, how do you quell their anxiety because they're used to their mom holding their hands? Maybe it has to do with not holding the hands, right? You're calling it their anxiety, but their hand is being held.
Mhm.
So let's go back for a second. So I started Free Range Kids and I went around the country discussing how did we get so afraid for our kids, ragging on Parents Magazine, giving amazing statistics about how everybody thinks the crime rate is higher today. The crime rate is lower than when you were growing up. If you grew up any time in the last 50 years, the crime rate is higher than it is now. And that's not because we're keeping kids inside, because the crime rate is also down against us adults. It's just a crime rate went up 60s, 70s, 80s, peaked in 93 and has been coming down ever since. A little blip this year because of COVID and craziness. So it's not that that the times have gotten less safe for kids, but we've become convinced that they are. So I talk about this around the country. People all nod along. Sometimes they laugh, and then they go back to doing exactly what they were doing before they came and heard all my words of wisdom and all my statistics. And I thought, this is not working. This is not working. So when I started Let Grow with two psychologists and a businessman and me, we decided that it would be dedicated to behavior, not just changing people's minds or making people think about something. Because really, when you change your behavior, it changes your mind. But changing your mind doesn't necessarily change your behavior. So Let Grow has something called the Let Grow Project. And I can brag about it all I want because it's free. So I'm not selling anybody anything, because it sometimes sounds like I'm selling, but it's free. And we're hoping that Staten Island is going to do the Let Grow Project itself. Schools do the Let Grow Project. Parents can do the Let Grow Project. And here it is. It's a homework assignment that kids get that says, Mom, look, here's my homework assignment. It says I have to go home, here I am, and do something new on my own without you. And the reason that this is such an important, even though it's simple initiative, is that it's really hard to step back, especially if the magazines and the Child Protective Service, everybody's telling you to always hover. But if your school tells you, or perhaps Staten Island parent tells you, it's better to step back, try it once, then you do, right? And when we give out the project, and if you download it from, I'm sure you're going to have the site up here somewhere. There's a list of things, your kid can choose from, but they discuss it with the parent. Climb a tree, make breakfast, run an errand, ride your bike, walk to grandma's, do something new, preferably outside the home without a parent. That's the push that the parent needs to let go of the hand. And it's much easier to do it if everyone at your school is doing it, or all the other third graders or fifth graders are doing it. So you're not the crazy mom putting your kid on the subway. You're the mom who said, well, if your kid is going to walk to the store, can mine walk with yours? Or maybe they'll go for pizza together, or maybe they'll rake leaves together. And that's the only thing that changes parents, is seeing that they can let their kids do something on their own. The exact experience you had today. He got himself to the bus stop, right? He got himself on the correct bus. He got himself to school without you. That's what changes the parent, and the parent being able to step back and being able to recognize the kid as growing and blossoming, not embryonic and needy and in danger, changes the kids. I mean, I don't know if I sent you, I don't know how to include something here while we're talking, but we did a video of seventh graders on Long Island who had done the Let Grow Project. They did it 20 times in a year. They had a fanatical teacher who I love. Yeah. And so some of the things that they did were minor. They did make muffins, but some of the things were major. They got their ears pierced. They went to church by themselves. They put their little sister on the bus in the morning one day when the parents were busy or out of the house. And the kids talking, we interviewed the 8th graders who had done this in 7th grade, and they were saying things like, I had been so anxious, I could barely speak. Or I would go up to want to talk to somebody and I'd go like this. I'd be too embarrassed or too worried about I was going to say something wrong. Or I wanted to go into a store, but I'd never been in a store without my mom. Actually, I have the 7th grader stuff right here on my other screen. So let me read to you. What were you not ready? What were you interested in doing but hesitant to do was a question that the teacher had asked the kids. I'm going to read you a bunch of answers. I was hesitant to try walking my dog alone because I was scared that he would get loose from the leash or a scary man would take me. That's one kid. I was afraid to climb a tree because I was scared I was going to fall and break a bone. Next kid. I wanted to try doing a wheelie on my bike, but I was scared I might hurt myself. Another kid. I wanted to try and cook, but there's an open flame. I could get hurt. It's like, okay. And I was hesitant to use a sharp knife as my parents had never let me. And there were 3 kids in this class of 240. She had all the 7th graders who hadn't been able to use knives yet. And what's interesting about this is that they have internalized this anxiety that comes from never trying to do it. I mean, like most dogs don't get off the leash, right? You as a 7th grader can easily walk a dog. And if you were growing up in any other era, and sometimes to this day in another country, it would be simple. You would be, shepherding the sheep at age 7. So to walk the dog in your Long Island neighborhood, or perhaps your Staten Island neighborhood, is really very, very doable. And it was only after they did it that they started feeling like they could breathe again and talk to each other and try new things. There was a kid who had to do a project. He was down at Disneyland. He'd never gone on any of the rides, but he knew he had to do a project by the time he came back from Disneyland. So he went on the Slinky Dog ride. I don't know what the ride is, but it sounds pretty babyish for a 7th grader, right? And after that, the floodgates were open, and then he would take other rides. You need the experience of doing something, of having the actual feeling of being scared, doing it anyway, succeeding, and especially having your parents step back and go, that's my boy or girl, to change. And so the Let Grow Project is the push that allows parents to feel not crazy and not guilt-ridden for stepping back. Well, one of Let Grow, we have a million slogans for Let Grow, but one of them is when adults step back, kids step up. So the upshot of these kids doing the Let Grow project a bunch of times in 7th grade is that one of the kids wrote to his teacher the next year, actually told her, and then she sent it to me, that he got off his anxiety meds.
Wow. I actually have a question. I feel like a lot of parents, the issue that they have isn't even so much with their own, not necessarily guilt, but their own just fear of letting their kids be more independent. I think there's a lot of parent shaming today. And I feel like a lot of people are worried about what other people will think. And I'm sure you expressed a lot of that earlier when you mentioned that you were the quote worst mom in America.
Yeah.
And I'll say it's happened to me myself.
Ooh, what happened?
Just in general, like I'll have you mentioned before about a kid being on a play date. I've had kids over my house before, and I'm a single parent. If I need to run to the store for milk and I have kids over, I don't want to have to kick my kids my kids' friends out because I got to run to the store for milk. Well, it would be nice if my son would walk, which is another story.
Now he will.
Right,
He will.
exactly.
Yeah.
But in the past, if I just need to run a quick errand and I won't do it, not because I'm afraid that the house is going to burn down while these kids are here. I'm worried that they're going to go home and tell their mom, Mikey and Delilah's mom, went to the store while we were gone, and they'll never come over again, and I'll be shamed by the whole world. So how do you tackle that as a parent? How do you overcome that shaming? How do you overcome worrying about how other parents are going to perceive you for letting your child become more independent?
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple of things sort of swirling around in my mind. One is there are probably a lot of moms like you, and you don't realize it because you haven't said that, would it be okay if I ran for some milk? And then the other one would say, I was wondering that too. So part of it is just breaking the ice of discussion. We're trying to figure out how to get little Let Grow groups to start. And, you're at Staten Island Parent, maybe you can figure this out. It feels like, if you had 2 other moms with kids who, were vaguely the same age as your kids or liked hanging out with your kids, or maybe it's your brother-in-law and the cousins are the same age, if you could make a pact, or it doesn't have to be as formal as that. It's like, when we get together, when your kids are at my house, you should know that like sometimes I'm going to run out. They always have my phone number if anything happens. Is that okay? It's like, sure. Do you mind if it's the same thing at my house? No, that sounds great. I also thought, like, with all of us working at home, I guess once COVID is either over or we all have our shots, I always thought that there should be something like the work date, play date, where you and I, we're both writers. We're sitting, like I'll bring my laptop over to your house and we'll sit there and we'll work for a little while and then we'll talk like the olden days when we used to talk with our friends in person. And then we'll go back to writing again. And meanwhile, our kids are locked outside. It's like, we need 2 hours where we're writing. You can drink from the hose, but you cannot come in, and you guys make your own fun. We just have to re-normalize the idea that we're not going to have our eyes on our kids all the time. And I did an intervention once with a family, actually in the Hamptons, in a fancy place. And the mom had never let her 10-year-old do anything on his own and was starting to become a very anxious kid. And actually, she realized it when he came home. And I guess the teacher called to say that, we'd asked William some questions today, like, what's the similarity between, cake and candy? And he said, both give you diabetes. And then they said, how would you describe gum? I don't know why they were talking about these foods. They said, a choking hazard. And she realized, like, okay, there's some, the anxiety is going up in him. So she found me and said, would you come help me? And I went out, and she had a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old and a little kid. And I said, okay, we're going to lock them out. And at first we didn't lock them out. We left the door open, and they would play on the front lawn and the back lawn and keep coming in. I need a drink. I have a splinter or whatever. It's like, no, you guys. And I gave them my watch and I said, when the clock hits half an hour, then you can knock on the door and we'll let you in. Until then, we literally are locking the doors. And what was amazing is that after that half hour, and I wouldn't let her look from the window outside. Are they still okay? She had to just sit there and drink coffee with me. And after that half hour, we went and we did look out the window, and they were completely absorbed in what they were doing. They were pulling like bugs out of the tree trunk. And then it was just this miraculous day. So we came out after a little while, and then we said, William's best friend lived across the street. Was he allowed to cross the street? No. It's like, okay, let's teach him how to cross the street. Look right. And then we did. And so he started crossing the street, and then he took me to the library. And while I was at the library, the little girl learned how to ride a bike, and we came back, and the boy was so jealous. He learned to ride a bike. So there's all this freedom awaiting you if you allow your kids to do this. And I think that as she was showing her friends, like, look, now my kid walks to the library, he crosses the street, he plays outside with his sister, it renormalizes itself. And so if there's a coterie of you doing this Let Grow project, and on Staten Island, there's about to be, because we're doing the project with you on Staten Island, where you let your kid do one of the Let Grow projects, whatever you choose, and then you take a picture of them, not following them the whole time, because that sort of defeats the purpose. And then you post it on social media with the hashtag. What is the hashtag? SI parents or
Let Grow SI. And then just tag at Staten Island _parent or at Staten Island USA, which we'll put it all in the comments so people can see.
Okay, yeah. So anyways, the point is, if people start doing it, then they're not going to start shaming you. We've heard from towns where the school started doing the Let Grow project that then kids started going to the grocery and kids started riding their bikes again, because it's a very normal thing to do, to have a childhood, and we've denormalized it. But when a bunch of people are doing it together, there's not this shaming anymore, because you have to do it. We got this assignment. You have to let your kid walk to the bus stop. I guess I will too. Nobody's going to scream, why did you let your kid walk to the bus stop? It's like, it was homework. I didn't have a choice. So it's another one of our slogans is making it easy, normal, and legal to let your kids have some independence back.
Is there some research behind it? It might help to share that with other parents that are nervous. There has to be some studies or something that have, that you guys know about that we could share.
Yeah, well, so one of the co-founders of Let Grow is a guy named Dr. Peter Gray. He's a psychology professor at Boston College, and he wrote such a great book called Free to Learn. It's just a spectacular book about how kids learn when they're curious and engaged, and it's very hard to teach them when they're not. And so he really believes in the power of play. And his research is sort of depressing, although there is the antidote. And it's that there have been these, the same test has been given to kids, some psychological test from the 50s onward. And it tests for anxiety, depression, and then there's another test that's different that tests for creativity. And as children's world has shrunk, and there are studies showing that kids are walking, less far and, certainly more sedentary. And it's not just the overprotective parent, it's the lure of technology, it's the fear of crime, and it's a lot of homework and a lot of testing. So there's a lot of different factors. But as kids have had less control over their lives because they are constantly monitored, watched, and structured, anxiety and depression, and I don't even want to say it, but even worse than depression, have been going up among kids. And so if you don't want to be part of that continuum, and none of us do, we have to figure out how to give kids back some what's called the internal locus of control. That's the feeling that you have some control over your life. It's the feeling you don't have. You don't have a lot of internal locus of control when you have a horrible micromanaging boss who's looking at everything and pointing it out and constantly telling you you're doing things badly, or here's how you should do them better. And kids have a lot of that in their lives. They're in school, and then they're in a structured class, and they're in a soccer, and how are those soccer drills going? And it's not that it's torture, but it's not a lot of control over, like, I feel like doing this now, or I want to go and, see what's behind that bush. So as the internal locus of control of children has shrunk, anxiety and depression, no surprise, have gone up. And so to reverse the anxiety and depression, kids have to have a little bit more autonomy.
Okay. And what do you ask parents to think about in doing so?
I ask them not to think. Don't think about, one of the things that feels innate that isn't is the idea that you should always be going to the worst case scenario. It's sort of a cultural tick right now that if, like you mentioned just now, if you want to let the kids stay home and you're not worried about the house burning down, the fact that we immediately go to well, what if the house burns down is new. When my mom sent me walking to school at age 5, because that's what you did back then, she wasn't spending every moment going okay, statistically, it's going to be all right. And she wasn't going in wow, if something horrible happens, I'll never forgive myself. And what about, Adam Walsh? It wasn't normal to be thinking about any time your child was out of your sight in terms of what is the most horrific crime that could possibly happen to them. And now that's sort of become normalized. And that's why I was America's Worst Mom, is because I let him ride the subway without thinking, what if? So if there's some way you can distract yourself, that's why me sitting and having coffee with the mom while we locked the kids out was the successful strategy, because then we started talking and we were having fun and the time went by fast and the kid came home.
So how do we challenge our kids to continue to grow? My son did a great job today, but how do I make sure he keeps that up and adds to it and does even more?
Well, first of all, you don't have to give him a birthday party for coming home and having done that by himself. You show that you appreciate that and that you see him for who he is, this growing young man. And then you start to expect it, right? Then you're not waking up the next morning to wake him up just like you had done the day before, right? It's now the norm that it's the baseline has moved, right?
Right.
And I don't know if you have to do so much to get kids to want to grow up and be more successful and be more, cool, because they can do things instead of needing mommy. These kids who started out, I'm looking back at the 7th grade list. I asked them, what did they love doing for their Let Grow project? They said things like going into a store and buying something, because that's usually the adult's job. Suddenly it's their job, right? Going to see a movie by myself with some friends because I didn't have anyone to keep watch over me. Here's a kid who has internalized the idea that somebody should always be watching over him. He goes to a movie with a friend and now it's normal. He's not going to go back to always wanting mom to take him to the movies after he's gone with a friend. It's like you don't go back to your kid crawls, right? And then they start toddling and then they start walking. You don't say, well, that's been great. Now it's back to crawling because, crawling is safer. You got 4 points on the ground. It's not something that has to be thought about that much. Growth is normal. a desire for autonomy, independence, mastery is there. But if you're looking for a little trick, sometimes, like my kid just left now, sometimes you make up a need. Oh my God, the guests are coming. I don't have toilet paper, gotta run. Or, your sister just threw up. She has a fever. Somebody has to go get her the Tylenol. So if kids want to feel like they're helping and that you trust them and that you need them, we all like that. Right. And so make up a minor emergency and have them step up to help you.
I mean, I feel like I can't agree with everything you're saying more. And I feel like
I thought you were going to say I can't agree.
No, I can't agree
Okay.
more. I would never classify myself as a helicopter parent, but I worry as much as the next mom. And sometimes I feel like like you said, you use the word normalize. I really think it's just great to normalize wanting your kid to be independent, and that it just doesn't make you a bad parent. I think you've just raised so many great points today, and I can't even express it more. I'm sure a lot of parents that are watching here in Staten Island and anywhere else would really agree. So thank you so much for being with us today. You can learn more about Let Grow by visiting letgrow.org. We are also here in Staten Island at Staten Island Parent and with the Borough President's Office. We are calling on kids to make increased independence. We're calling to normalize it.
There you go.
So much. So what we're asking you guys to do out there is to take pictures of your kids as they work to go through these steps in this Let Grow, this independence projects. So we just want you guys to take a picture of your kid doing something to show it how they're independent, and upload the picture to Instagram or Facebook, Twitter. Just be sure to tag the Borough President's Office at Staten Island, USA. Tag Staten Island Parent, SI Parent on Facebook or Twitter, or you can tag us on Instagram at Staten Island_parent, and be sure to use the hashtag LetGrowSI. And we'll put links to everything in the comments. We're going to put a link to the Let Grow Independence Kit in the comments. And if anybody wasn't able to make it, if you have parent friends that you want to show this to, and I highly, highly recommend you showing it to your parents, because that's going to help us spread the word that it's okay for me to go get milk while your kid is in my house.
It's okay for your kid to go get milk.
Right, exactly. That's great. That's even better. Go, give me a few minutes to myself.
Yeah.
It'll be on the Borough Hall's YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/SIUSABP. Again, that's going to be
posted. Wow, that's a lot. What is it?
It's all in the chat. Don't worry. I got to
say.
But thank you again so much for joining us, Lenore. And thank you to everybody who tunes in, and go enjoy your families in this beautiful weather that we're having. And let's hope it keeps up. Okay.
Great. Listen, thank you. Very happy. I really have enjoyed my time on Staten Island, and especially getting to know your borough president and now your wonderful magazine. And I can't wait to see pictures of your kids doing all sorts of new things on their own. And you're going to be very proud to share those pictures. Believe me.
Absolutely. I'm going to post some of my own.
Cool. Yeah.
But I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay.
And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but for every family that uploads a photo instituting the Let Grow principles will be entered to win a $100 Applebee's gift card. So you get free dinner, and your kid's independent. It's just a win-win. So all right. Thanks so much again, Lenore.
Oh, thank you. This was really fun. I hope to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye, Janine.